Alright, welcome back to Star Ocean Anamnesis. So it's been a while since I last did a character guide, but I have another one for you, and this one is on Lucifer. So, let's go. Lucifer is an ace invoker that can convert a part of a character's int stat into their attack stat. His first talent, Wise Man Strategy, increases the entire party's int stat by 15%, so this one pairs well with his second talent, so he increases the character's int stat and then he converts it, so overall it's a pretty good buff, and it also works for other invokers, so pretty decent. And then his second talent, Sharp and Shrewd, converts 55% of all attackers, sharpshooters, and defenders' int stats into their attack stats. So this is the same as the Lizard conversion, except it's a bit stronger, sitting at 55%, and conversion is basically an extra attack buff that stacks on top of party-wide attack buffs, and for most characters it's about a 25% increase to their attack stats, so this is very good. And his third talent, Observer, increases his own critical hit chance by 20% or 40% if the hit count is sitting at 100 hits or 200 hits. Compared to his other buffs, this one is kind of unimpressive, but it's still useful. The extra critical hits can help you when you're fighting higher difficulty bosses like Misery 3 and 4, so it's just a nice bonus to his already amazing kit. And then his last talent, Decimating Treachery, reduces his AP cost by 50% whenever he uses Elimination Magnum Tornado. This talent drops his AP costs to ridiculously low levels, and it means that he can keep up a combo at 300% cancel bonus for a very long time, so it's a really good one. Then on to his attacks. First of all, we have Right Wing. Move to the right while firing blasts of energy. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 540%. It does 8 hits, costs 23 AP, and it has a wind element. This is a very fast attack with a very high hit count, and it also doesn't cost a lot of AP if you use it after Magnum Tornado, and it also moves Lucifer over to the right a good amount, so it makes him very mobile. Overall, it's a very good attack, especially as a combo filler. And then we have Left Wing. Move to the left while firing blasts of energy. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 540%, does 8 hits, costs 23 AP, and it has a wind element. And as you can tell, this is the opposite version of the Right Wing. He just moves to the left while he fires some quick blasts, so all comes down to personal preference, which one you want to use. And then we have Elimination Tornado. Hurl a spiraling wind current at your foe. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 610%. It does 2 hits, costs 29 AP, and it has a wind element. And this is Lucifer's main damage skill, which comes down to the fact that it has a high multiplier, and it also gets extra hits whenever you use it against a big enemy, which ups its damage output even more. But on top of that, it also has a very slow travel time, which means that you can cast it at a 200% cancel bonus, go into either left or right wing, and then by the time this attack hits the enemy, it's sitting at a 300% cancel bonus. So overall, a very nice attack. And lastly, we have Elimination Magnum Tornado. In case of foe in a swirling airstream, its power is determined by multiplying int by 970%. It does 9 hits, costs 35 AP, and it has a wind element. And this is Lucifer's unique attack. It has a decently long cast time, so you're best off casting it at the start of your combo with a Charge Assault, and then it also drops his AP cost by 50%, so you can make your combos even longer after using this, so overall, pretty good as well. And it also has a 9 hit count, so pretty good for hit count building as well. And then lastly, we have his Rush, Wind of Decimation. Soar high into the air and drop an energy blast like a raging storm. Its power is determined by multiplying int by 4000%. It has a wind element, and as a post-rush buff, it increases his own int damage dealt by 60% for 20 seconds. A 4000% multiplier is decent. It's kind of the standard now, and Lucifer also has a kind of a low int stat for an invoker, so it's not going to do that much damage, at least not as much as other invokers, so in my opinion, you're best off using this in the middle of your rush chain. But his post-rush buff does increase his int damage by 60%, which is a huge buff, so it's going to increase his damage output by a lot, especially considering how good his tornado attack is against big enemies, so overall, this is a pretty decent rush. Alright, now moving on to equipment. Luckily for Lucifer, we have a couple orbs that he can use, and he doesn't really benefit from imbuement, so that makes it pretty simple. The first one I recommend is the Blue Star Gadget, which you can get from the coin shop. It has a 560 int stat at max level, and it increases int by 15%, reduces damage taken by 10%, and at max limit break you unlock 10% HP recovery every 3 seconds. So this is the standard orb that you would use on a character if you don't have anything else. It bumps Lucifer's int stat up to about 3700, which isn't bad. Of course, there are other invokers that have that naturally, but still 3700 for an excellent buffer. that's pretty good. The damage reduction is also good for survivability, and the HP recovery, while not absolutely necessary, does help out a little bit. And of course, for gacha weapons, we have the weapon that was introduced alongside of him, the Funeral Ornament, which has an 1100 int stat, imbues your attacks with wind, increases wind damage dealt by 40%, increases AP recovery speed by 50%, and gives you a 80-20 guts at max limit break. The wind imbuement doesn't do anything for Lucifer because he already has wind on his attacks, but the wind damage does increase his damage output by a bit, so that's pretty good. And the AP recovery speed also helps him out a lot because he's a caster, so he's not going to use his normals to recover AP. He's just going to stand still, so the AP recovery speed again ups his damage output and gives him a bit more survivability. And the guts, that's not really necessary, so this is a pretty good weapon. But there's another gacha weapon that you can run on Lucifer, which is the Insect Planet, which increases damage dealt to insects by 40%, recovers 10% HP every 5 seconds, and at limit break 3 you unlock a 20% chance of causing stun. I should probably mention that I'm not just recommending this particular orb to you. Any orb that has a racial factor works, so damage dealt to demons, beasts, any of those work. But this is the only one that we have right now, so the extra damage helps because Lucifer already has elements on his attack, so he doesn't really need any of those, and if there's an elemental buffer in the party, that overwrites his wind damage buff. And then the HP recovery, not really necessary, but the chance of causing stun is actually really good, so if you happen to have this at limit break 3, I would highly recommend running this because it's a pretty good one. And for accessories, I recommend the Combat Armlet, which gives you anti-flinch of 15% HP or less when you're standing at close range, and increases AP recovery speed by 30% when you're standing at long range. So like I said, AP recovery speed is very good for Lucifer, and I'm mostly recommending it for the AP recovery speed. So this one's pretty good, but any of the other offensive accessories also work, like Charm of Insight increases his critical hit damage, which pairs well with his crit buff, so any offensive accessory would do wonders on him. And now on to his battle skill setup. First of all, I recommend Elimination Magnum Tornado because it reduces his AP cost by 50%, and it's also a pretty powerful attack in and of itself, so you don't really have a reason not to run this. And then secondly, Elimination Tornado, because like I said, that's his main damage skill, so again, no reason not to run it. And then lastly, I recommend Left Wing or Right Wing, doesn't really matter, you can run whichever one. You can use it to build the hit count or as combo filler. And speaking of combos, a combo that I recommend for Lucifer is a normal attack into a Charge Assaulted Elimination Magnum Tornado, into Elimination Tornado, into Left Wing, into as many tornadoes as you can fit. Also, make sure that you're standing a decent distance away from the enemy, because that way you can use Tornado and then use Left Wing immediately after, get up to a 300% cancel bonus, and then that Tornado hits with the 300%, and Left Wing also hits with the 300%, so there you go. So, for a party recommendation, just like with Lazard, Lucifer fits best in parties that have physical-based characters as well as hit count-based characters, so the first character I recommend is a Were Millie. She increases the entire party's attack stat by 45% or 55% depending on what the hit count is sitting at, gives everybody AP on normals, and post-rush she increases the elemental damage of the entire party by 50%. Then, secondly, I recommend a Youth Sophia. She increases damage for the entire party by 40%, increases single target damage for everybody standing at long range by 15%, and she also grants everybody using long range weapons a 90-30 guts as well as an extra 15% chance of causing stun, and her hit counts are also very good. And lastly, keeping with the Sophia theme, I recommend a Summer Sophia. She increases the entire party's attack and in damage by 20%. She also brings the heals, and of course, she recovers the party's AP whenever she uses her offensive skills. So as you can see, I went with a long-range based party to take full advantage of Youth Sophia's buffs, the guts in particular. We also have some good hit counts with Youth Sophia and Summer Sophia, as well as Lucifer. His hit counts aren't bad either, so they can help Were Millie achieve her attack buff, which in turn increases Youth Sophia's attack. The AP recovery from Summer Sophia is going to be especially useful for Lucifer, considering that his AP costs are already incredibly low, so it'll allow him to keep up the combo for even longer. But Lucifer, just like Lazard, is very flexible in party building. You can basically toss him into any physical-based party, and he's going to help out the party quite a bit. So Lucifer, he's a pretty good team player. So in short, Lucifer is a pretty good invoker, which comes down to the fact that he is actually a permanent character that has the int into attack conversion. The only other character that has this buff is of course Lizard, and he is limited, so it's pretty cool that we now have a permanent character with this very powerful buff, especially considering that we now have Misery 4s, and this buff is very good in Misery 4. And like I said before, Lucifer is a very excellent team player. He has a party-wide int buff, which can help out the invokers and the healers, and he has the conversion, which is good for all of the physical characters. It doesn't really matter what party you throw him in, which of course makes him a very good pick for public parties as well. Now, the only unfortunate part is that he is locked to the wind element, even though he uses an orb, which from this point on, orbs are going to start getting elemental imbuements, but he has 2 symbology attacks, and symbology attacks can't be imbued with anything, and he has 2 normal attacks which can be imbued, but you're not really going to use those for damage, so unfortunately wind is his main element, and if you find an enemy resistant to wind, he's going to be kinda screwed, but you can still use him against enemies even if they're not weak to wind. Lucifer is a very good addition to our roster of permanent characters, and if you're a new player and there are currently no limited banners up, it's a very good idea to reroll for this guy. And there we go, that's it for the Lucifer character guide. Now, hopefully, we actually get some new characters next week. Maybe the Bride characters, maybe the Summer characters, who knows, but I'm definitely looking forward to them. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I guess I will see you all next time. Peace!